All right, folks, hello. Just gonna do a quick little driving ramble. I'm off to Cape Cod for a few days, so I probably won't be doing any videos until mid next week. I think I'm caught up with all of my watch collection videos, which is kind of a nice feeling. Although there is one, and I think you know who you are, who said he wanted me to do one, but he was waiting for something to come in or something. So, Mr. VP, if you know who I'm talking to, if you're watching this, feel free to send that to me in the next few days or whatever. No rush, I don't care. Anyways, let's see, a few things to sort of ramble about. One is, I'm not going to go into great detail, but one is there's been a little dialogue in the form of two videos from A Gentleman's Life, Sam, and Stuart Lomas about luxury and what is luxury. And you know, interesting thing is I don't consider myself, and I've never considered myself as somebody who's really into luxury. At least as I understood it what I understood it to mean. Luxury to me was just really getting into wealth and material possessions and that sort of thing. The luxury lifestyle. Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. Remember that show? I was in the 80s. It was just never something I aspired to or something that was really of concern to me. But, you know, in terms of this idea of luxury as being the experience, not necessarily only of extravagance, but of as Stuart put it, of the beauty of life, of the beauty of things. That luxury is something in a way beyond the normal experience. I mean, I certainly can resonate with that. But I started this channel partially, I don't want to say it was out of reaction or out of wanting to be subversive or contrarian, but I started this channel because I felt that there was sort of a voice lacking, mainly in the artsy, luxury-dominated corner of YouTube, that advocated for a different perspective. And since then, there's been many other people that are more aligned with that perspective in different ways, all with their own unique voices. And certainly, you know, the thing is that I mean, as I commented on Stuart's channel, and I think Stuart is very much aligned with this perspective. What ends up happening is you start with like maybe buying what I call tier 2 watches, which is sort of the first tier of collectible watches. They're the affordable collectible watches, the watches that cost, you know, in the low hundreds, 100 to 500 or so. And they're above and beyond just your garden variety $50 watches, or, you know, your cheap fashion watches, or your very functional watches that you'd buy at Target or something. And it's the beginning of the collector phase. And what ends up happening is that you explore it, and then you gradually creep up, and your sensibilities, your palate develops, so you start noticing finer and finer things. And you start wanting finer and finer things. And this is a process that happens in any form of collecting, any form of anything that requires the development of a palate. It could be stereo equipment. It could be wines or beers or cars or whatever it is. It could be actually extreme experiences. You know, there's people out there that are junkies for extreme danger and stuff like that. And so they want to always push the edge. What's the more extreme? What's the more dangerous? Maybe I'll do this next thing that's even more crazy. Pushing the edges. And that's something that we have, which is like this, in a way it's a variation on what an Olympic athlete tries to do, which is beat their own best time. And so imagine if you're an Olympic runner, a sprinter, for instance, and the joy you experience when you beat your best time. I mean, it's probably intense, and to us, it might sound like, who cares? Wow, it was 12.46 rather than 12.48. Big whoop. But for that athlete, that's where they center their so much of their sense of well-being is on that number, on breaking their own mark. So I think a lot of people put that into watches, but it's not just again, it's not just a matter of that element. It's also, we just simply we get acclimated to new levels of quote unquote luxury. And this happens like I've found this to be the case with stereos. Like if you get used to a certain level of audio equipment, if you don't have if you drop down a notch, or if you are at somebody's house and they're listening to music on a stereo that's significantly worse than yours, it's going to be really noticeable to you. So in a way, it's like the price you pay for going up the quote-unquote ladder, the luxury ladder, or the tiers, and not just the watch tiers, but whatever tiers we're talking about. I've certainly found this to be the case with beer, specifically IPAs, because I love IPAs. I just, I have a really developed sense of the quality of an IPA. It's even hard to characterize it, but the hoppiness and the flavor, the complexity, which I imagine is what wine aficionados experience. And so for me, it's, I'll drink a Sierra Nevada Torpedo, but it's kind of bland and straightforward compared to some of the higher end IPAs. So it's a tricky thing, and in a way, it ruins you for quote unquote lesser things. So the problem, though, is I think Stuart made this point, that imagine being somebody that has immense wealth where essentially you can have whatever you want in terms of material goods. And if you're wealthy enough, you can pretty much experience whatever you want to experience. I feel like flying to Monte Carlo tomorrow and Reykjavik the next day. I mean, that's like a no-brainer. I feel like having a supermodel orgy, if you're wealthy enough, you can have those experiences. And I imagine what ends up happening is you become so jaded that everything's too easy and nothing's special anymore. And that's what Stuart was saying about if your lifestyle is completely what most of us would consider luxurious, then nothing is luxury. Then you lose that sense of that really special experience. Now, this is why I've said before that it's better to be really happy with your one tier 2 watch than to have a collection of say tier 4 watches and always be craving the next higher thing. There's this subjectivity there. Really what it comes down to is enjoying what you have and really learning how to do that. And I certainly have been guilty of the endless hunger to get more and more and more, the next thing. It's not even going up the tiers, it's going, sideways, finding just new experiences, new watches. And that's still something that it's there for me. I'm not over it. I haven't transcended it, but I'm very aware of the process, and I try to work with it and not feed it as much as I used to. Because what I have found is even if you get a quote unquote Grail watch, a watch that on some level you feel will ultimately satisfy you, I've found time and time and again that it can't. It just won't. It can't. But that watches are more satisfying when you don't use them to satisfy you, but you just use them to enjoy what they are. And I think this is just maturity. This is just a maturation process that our society, our economically profit-based society, consumerist society, doesn't support in any way. It supports the feeling of voidness, the feeling of need for more, right? The need for the next thing, the next higher thing, the next new thing, whatever that is. So to turn away from that is very, very hard, because there's really very little supports for that in our culture. To some degree, the Eastern philosophical or spiritual traditions like Buddhism or Taoism, certainly, you know, they're the antidote to this to some degree. Although you can still find it. I mean, people that are into like yoga and different spiritual trips, they end up looking for the next spiritual experience, the next spiritual high. Oh, how deep can I go into my meditation? What sublime experience can I have next? So it becomes a different kind of seeking. It's something that I feel is it's intrinsic, at least to the human condition as we experience it now. I don't know if it has to be this way, but it's how it is for 99.9% of us, to some degree, in one way or the other. But I do think that there is something possible, which I love this quote from T.S. Eliot, which I can't quite remember, but it's something like, through all of our exploration, we will eventually arrive back where we started and see it as if for the first time. And I think this is the human quest. That's the real Grail. The real Grail is not the watch. It's not the next wine. It's not the next fuck, pardon my language, but I think that it's appropriate in this situation. It's not that next thing or object or experience or whatever. What it is it's transcending the need for the object or the thing or the experience to be the Grail, to fulfill you. It's finding that fulfillment in whatever you have, whatever you're experiencing, whether it's a $100 Fossil watch or a $100,000 Richard Mille, right? That it doesn't, in a sense, the object, oh, pardon me, the object doesn't matter. The cost of the object doesn't matter. Even the experience to some degree. Now, all of that said, this doesn't negate that a Omega Planet Ocean is a better quality watch than a Seiko Black Monster, right? It doesn't negate that's a real difference. The craftsmanship, the quality of the movement, the fit and finish, the design, everything that goes into it. The tiers, quote unquote, are real. You know, the different costs to some degree have real basis in an improvement in quality. But the thing is that when it's almost like we're giving away our power when we rely upon the external value to give us our sense of happiness and well-being. That we lose our ability to say, I'm sitting here and I get to be right now. I get to breathe. I get to contemplate being alive. I get to enjoy the sun shining. I get to breathe in the flowers, or even I get to breathe in the fumes of car exhaust. I get to experience this craziness that is life, right? I get to experience this. And that's a real amazing thing that we take for granted. You know, we take for granted that we get to be who we are. Even if we're a total schmuck, even if we're like miserable and we're not happy with our lives, because all of us are miserable to some degree. You know, as Woody Allen says, there's two kinds of people. There's the miserable and the terrible. And the terrible are the people with like, illnesses that they're going to die from, cancer, that sort of thing, terribly disfigured or something like that. And the miserable is everyone else. And so if you're miserable, just be happy that you're miserable and not terrible. And I wouldn't want to say anything about the quote-unquote terrible situations, because I haven't experienced that. Knock on wood, and I hope I don't. But I think even for people in those terrible situations, sometimes they find this deeper sense of well-being through that. I've read stories of people that, it was at least this one guy who became a quadriplegic and said it actually was, I don't know if he said it was the best thing that ever happened to him, but he said that it completely made him a better person, that he was a total asshole before it happened. And that I think he learned to appreciate the little things more, and then he just was kinder and so forth. So sometimes, you know, even in those situations when somebody has something huge, and I remember these people lost their teenage daughter, and you know, this is like, anyone who's a parent, this is the worst nightmare, is to lose your child. There's nothing worse, really. If you're a parent, you'll do anything you possibly can to protect your children. It's just so deeply ingrained. And it's really, I mean, it's the real, as far as I can tell, it's the only truly unconditional love that one can experience, unless you're like, you know, the Buddha, and you maybe love everything unconditionally. But they when I saw them like a day or two after their daughter had passed, and they were completely in shock and terrible suffering, but there was something so amazing about them. It's like they had been broken open, their whole shell, their whole persona, their whole, you know, we all carry around this armor and this persona, and that had all crumbled, and they were so raw, and they were actually really beautiful. They were like, it was like, wow, that's a real human being there. Those are real human beings. So this is not really the ramble that I intended, although the rambles are, that's the point of the rambles, to go and not have a certain intention, just to have like a theme or a topic. And I was actually going to talk about something else as well, but I will get to that perhaps on the drive back. So I am at my destination, and I'll leave it at that for now. Later, folks. Watch collection videos, which is kind of a nice feeling. Although there is one, and I think you know who you are, who said he wanted me to do one, but he was waiting for something to come in or something. So, Mr. VP, if you know who I'm talking to, if you're watching this, feel free to send that to me. At least as I understood it to what I understood it to mean. Luxury to me was just really getting into wealth and material possessions and that sort of thing. The luxury lifestyle, lifestyles of the rich and famous. Do you remember that show? It was in the 80s. It was in the next few days or whatever. No rush, I don't care. Anyways, let's see, a few things to sort of ramble about. One is, I'm not going to go into great detail, but one is, there's been a little dialogue in the form of two. All right, folks, hello. Just going to do a quick little driving ramble. I'm off to Cape Cod for a few days, so I probably won't be doing any videos until mid next week. I think I'm caught up with all of my videos from A Gentleman's Life, Sam, and Stuart Lomas, about luxury and what is luxury. And you know, interesting thing is, I don't consider myself, and I've never considered myself as somebody who's really into luxury.